Hi, I'm Tom. Welcome to Ledgemere Farm. What we're going to do today is go down and get that window that I was working on from the pump house, and I'm going to try to make some trim or the molding or whatever you want to call it, the intricate detailed molding that goes inside that holds the glass together, as well as finish the part on the frame or the casing or whatever you want to call it that makes the window a square. So stick around and let's go see if we can figure out how to make this. I have my dad's router out now, and what I need to do is make the bevel on this. Now you can see it's like a T here, so it's squared off, and this is where the panes of glass are going to sit. And then this right here, well, so the panes would be either on the inside or outside depending on how the window is placed inside the casing. Where the issue is once you get something this thin right here, trying to run it through the router without it going like this or just breaking altogether, that's where the difficulty is going to lay. So I'll try to go ahead and get one side of this done, and then I'm going to reevaluate and see how I'm going to thin it up. The thickness is right there as far as this goes, but I need to rip that in half again, and then I'll have to put little T's in it in order to set the glass in it. So it gets pretty intricate after a while, and I know how to make these grooves like this. But like I said, where the skill is involved and where the trickiness is to try to get this all made like that without busting it into 1,000 pieces, or worse than that, cutting your finger off. So I'm going to go ahead and put one edge on this and just kind of get started and see how far I can get and reevaluate here. The way these router bits work is here you've got a wheel, and then it cuts up here. So it really doesn't matter how many times you go over it. As long as that wheel is still touching the outside of it, you're not going to take off more material each time. So it ends up coming out pretty good. And you know, you got to, something this small, you got to kind of work it a little bit. I have my table saw set up to the width I want, and the easiest way to do that is just take the piece that you want to keep and put it against the blade, put it against the fence, and then what's most important, I did tighten it up a little bit, but the most important thing you have to do now is make sure that it's the same on both sides. So we're about 5 3/8 there, and I got to come back just a little bit on this side. Otherwise, you'll get a weird looking piece of wood coming out, but it has to be perfect. And then sometimes by the time you've got it measured, so you've taken the crookedness out, now it's, you know, a little sloppy in there. So we'll try this again. About 1/8 of an inch. So here's the piece. That's my pattern. Here's the piece I'm making. I got some more of this oak. I'm going to rip it down so I don't have to keep going back and forth to the table saw. Woodworking is not an exact science, and one thing I've learned is that the difference between a good carpenter and a great carpenter is that everybody makes mistakes, but a great carpenter knows how to fix them and mitigate them, minimize them, or make it look like they didn't make a mistake in the first place. And some of the methods they use to do that are caulking, trim, and sometimes you have to rip it all apart and start over. But so what I'm going to do is, I know this is the right thickness. I'm going to try something. I'm going to try with this small piece of board. I'm going to try going in and then go end for end with it, and then go the other way and see if that does what I want it to do. And like I said, the wheel on here prevents you from taking off more wood than you want to. And with what I'm doing, you really want to use oak. A piece of pine's not going to cut it, or spruce. it'll just disintegrate. So you really need a piece of oak. And the oak is also going to be a lot more weather resistant than softwood would be. So I'll go ahead and try this and see if this works out. And a lot of, woodworking, when you're trying to copy old wood or old, window frames and stuff, is trial and error. You have to keep kind of playing around until you get what you want. I know I've butchered quite a bit of this piece of wood. And there's a little bit in here that's going to be usable, and it's just so thin now that it's taken too much. So that idea, I'm not so sure that worked out what I wanted it to do. I was hoping it would round the whole thing over, but it's just so thin now. It's pretty much destroying it. So I gotta go back to the drawing board and think about this again. See, the thing is, when molding is made, they have what they call a planer. So they'll take the rough boards, and the planer, what it does is has knives on the top and on the top and the bottom. And so when the board goes through, those knives, they have different kinds of knives for different kinds of molding. And it'll be, so when the board goes through, the knives that are rolling through it will make the molding this way. And so trying to replicate it with the routers, it's a little bit difficult, if not impossible. I've got some other router bits I can look at, but I think the problem I have is just that by the time I get it down to this, it's so thin that it's the wheel's not working right. It's taken off more than it wants to. And so I can kind of get one side right, but when I go to take off the other side, so you're putting it through like this, well, now the wheel's off, and so it's taken off, it's making it too thin, and then now it's not the same anymore. It's not the same thickness. So I'm probably gonna have to make something similar, but not exactly. And I guess where it's going on a barn, it doesn't matter too much. I just was really hoping that I could kind of replicate that with a router, but I believe this stuff right here would have probably been done with a planer. It would have gone through this way, and as the rollers went through, it would have cut the pieces. So I need to think about that for another couple minutes. I've mentioned this before about how my father and brother were cabinet makers, and I'm sure you're going, geez, Tom, why are you so dumb? If your dad used to make this stuff, why don't you know how to do it? Well, to be honest with you, children, and I'm no exception, you always had something better to do than to hang out with your old man. And so I missed a lot of things that, I wished I didn't miss. But, so now I'm trying to reinvent the wheel. If I'd have just paid attention to him when he was building stuff, I would have known. But I didn't, so here I am. Now what I've got to do is I'm just making a groove to put the glass in. So I just need to figure out which height to put the blade on the saw, where I'm not going to cut all the way through. So what I'm trying to do is, the saw is turning right now when I pull this piece of wood towards me. What I want it to do is slide right over. So this is the part where, see, the saw is turning, and I need to recess that saw to the point where when I pull this forward, I'm not turning the saw anymore. You got to kind of hold it level too, because you got to remember there's already a groove in it. So I'd say that's probably it right there. I can always take more off, but I can't put more back on. As the saying goes, I cut it 3 times and it's still too short. Let's try that and see how that works. So just little baby steps up and up, and you can see, so here's my groove now, and I don't want to take off too much, because now what I got to do is cut this right here into the T, so the glass is going to set in there. So I'll run this next piece through. I gotta do the other side, but I can also go like this to finish the square. So I've got both of the grooves on it. You can see now what I have to do is just take this part off. So this is the hard part, because if you take off too much, you ruin the whole board. so I've got to adjust the fence and make that fit. So this part right here, no sweat. The hard part is making that part round, and I guess I could just roll it over on the sander, but it feels like that's cheating. Here's the two pieces now side by side. On the right is the original, and you can see it makes like a cone on the top. I've got the bottom where the glass goes fine, but I need to pointy to the top. So what I'm going to do, these saws, saw table, you can angle the blade over, and you have to think in reverse, and that's the problem that I have, is trying to think backwards. I can't put the fence on this side, there's no track for it, so I have to think backwards. Now if I take this over like that, and like I said, I can always take off more, I can't put more back on. So if I put my groove that I made on the right, like that, and then go through, maybe that'll work for me. Let's try it and see if I can ruin this whole thing that I just made. Remember the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson, where he's trying to build the rocking chair, and he's got thinks it's the last one that he's going to make, and it finally works, so he rocks a couple times and then it disintegrates underneath him. He gets mad and he chucks it into a pile, and there's another whole stack of busted up rocking chairs that were prior failures. Here's my original piece here, and then my new piece here. So they're pretty similar now. They're the same height. The part squared off for the glass is right, but now I've got kind of this weird edge here. So I'm going to put it on the sander to see if I can round it off just a little bit to make it look more like that right there. And unfortunately, like I said, I don't have a planer because this would have gone through and just been planed out. So it would have gone through this way and would have worked right out perfectly, but I don't have my dad's planer. That went to one of my brothers. And all the knives and everything went with it. So I'm just trying to make do with what I got and try to remember how to make stuff. So when we look at this now, they look pretty much the same. Like I said, I've looked on Marketplace, I've looked everywhere to try to find another one, a window like this, because it would be a lot easier if I could just find one for 10 bucks somewhere instead of having to, you know, build something. But this is the part here that used to be like this, and now this is the one I made. You can see I was able to run my router through here like that. And yes, the other hard part is make sure I put the right side. When I cut this, it's going to be very critical that I don't put the wrong side going the wrong way, if that makes any sense, because it's, you can see it's not the same. There's a flat side for the glass, so the flat side is up. So there's just not much left of this piece. This one's, I don't even know how it lasted as long as it did. I'm going to say this is the flat part here, but this is a pretty sad state of affairs with this one. What I'm going to have to do is cut this groove with the table saw. I'm going to put this out of the way before I bust it. And I only got one piece of it, and I think that's enough. The problem I have is the other half of this is gone. So I'm hoping I didn't make this too long. I put it next to the other piece that was on there. And it's the same length. So I should be okay. Again, judging by what's left of it, which isn't much, I'd say the flat side was here. So the flat side's right. I'll hold that there, and I gotta mark that. The same on the other side. Now, I don't do this every day. I don't claim to be a carpenter. I don't claim to be a cabinet maker. I don't claim to be anything. Or frame, or whatever you want to call it. Tapers down, and that makes the water run off, in theory. If it was straight like this, the water would come inside, but when it's tapered like that, when it's sitting outside, then the water will run off. So, weird angles. I gotta think backwards again. There's all kinds of opportunity for this to not work out. Now I know, when you look at this, they're not the same thickness. I don't know how I managed to do that. It's the same, almost the same thickness that way, but these are off. So, perfect. One side of this will be a lot easier than the other. Bring that blade up. So we bring that up until it hits. It's really important to use a finished blade on this, because if you use a construction blade, you're going to break everything. Like I said, we can always go back and take off more. Square side. So I know you're probably asking me, why am I going this way instead of this way while the blade's round? So if I went in this way, I'd have a weird shaped bottom, and I want that to be straight. So I raised it up for the other side. I'm going to put the good side in. Let's try that. tell when I did this, one side's deeper than the other, and that's to account for the angle I got to put in it. So the way I'm going to get that angle is to set that over, drop the saw down as much as I need to, and let's see. What I really want is the saw to go that way, but it doesn't, it goes to the left, so now I've got another dilemma that I need to figure out. So I guess this might be what separates the men from the boys, I'm not sure. So I'll have to hold. It still goes the wrong way. I'm going to have to cut it from this side. That looks like it right there. So I'll have to follow, let's see. I've got my line, but that's not going to help too much. I'm going to have to eyeball it, I guess, and try to be straight at the same time, so that's where this guy comes in. This is called a square. The new ones have a clamp, so you can clamp your piece on it and then just shove it right through. I'll go on the second line, or the first line, depending on which way you're looking at it. Have this on there. Try my... It's going to be like that. Let's give it a whirl. See how that goes. It's not perfect. I took a little bit too much of a bite out of it, so I'll recess it a little bit before I do the other one. But when you look at it, it looks like it does. It tapers off to the top and bottom, so it goes either way, I guess. The hardest part that I'm worried about is I got to cut grooves in these and then make it all work. And so I'm really getting a little bit nervous on that. And when you look at it here, it tapers in like that. So by doing it again, it's going to taper in. And I'm going to recess that just a little bit. I've got to flip it over and cut this part off, so I'll straighten the saw out. Bring that up until it hits. Make sure I got the flat side where it's supposed to be. Take a rubber mallet and just tap it in. Get that. So there, we'll leave that, let that glue settle and harden up, and then I'm going to put a brad through on the corner here and reinforce this corner. I've got this all made, so I think what I'm going to have to do is It looks like there's a notch, and so it kind of like, well, you know, they just kind of overlap each other. One goes under, one goes over. While I'm waiting for that glue and stuff to dry on that other window, this is the first window we were working on, so I'm just going to paint the other side of that real quick. Yeah, so we got that all finished up, and I'll take care of my paint. When I do these, I prefer either a flat or a satin finish. I don't really care for gloss too much on. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. This is part 2, and next time I see you, we'll do part 3. I'm going to put glass in the first window that goes down on the end of the barn there, and then the second thing we'll do is we'll come back here and work some more on this other barn sash window that I built the trim boards for. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.